I'm Treb. I'm a serial entrepreneur who's worked for a number of cloud companies over the last 20 years. And I'm going to talk about frictionless sales. We have sold our own product online, but we've supported a lot of what's called software as a service, but basically business software companies who sold online. And what we realized over the years of supporting those companies and seeing our own products is regardless of what they were selling, whether it was presentation software, financial software, human resources, there was a direct correlation for companies that had buyers who could buy them online without going through a lot of hoops, that could buy them by the user or buy them hourly. The companies that could do that well grew much more quickly. I've been in the startup world for about 20 years now. I'm actually, the reason it says, oh, there we go, sorry. The reason it says startup founders, I'm in the process of starting my fourth startup. I was early on in the first one and then did two of my own, and have raised quite a bit of money, sold those three companies off to telecoms, spent my time in jail working for very large companies, most recently NTT. And when NTT bought us, of course, when you get big companies like that, they do things like personal development and making you a better person and all the things I ignored when I'm in my startup side. And one of the things they did was they sent us to a listening class. I thought listening was something I did to my own voice. I didn't realize I was supposed to actually listen to other people. In this listening class, they mentioned something very interesting. They said that the average person today, am I loud enough? The average person today checks their mobile phone, there we go, checks their mobile phone 150 times a day. And I said, that's kind of funny because my daughter, who's 17, only checks her mobile phone once a day. From the minute she wakes up until the minute she goes to bed. And you start realizing that here's my daughter, she's a cute girl, she's cheerleader, just going off to university, blonde, great personality. She uses technology 10 times more than I did when I was 17. And I was a founding member of the computer club. I was a treasurer of the Gamers Guild. Matter of fact, the kids say I wasn't even the king of the dorks, I was the treasurer of the dorks. I spent my entire life with this, but I use technology to a fraction of what your average 17-year-old uses today, who's a cheerleader and has a whole actual social life. And we see that. We see this workforce entering, really anybody under the age of 30 who's coming into the workforce, and they have grown up with this stuff their entire life, right? That the fact that technology is immediately available, that they use it all the time, anywhere, anyhow, how they can share and collaborate on stuff, that the mobility that they have, and now we have these IoT, this is just the way they expect things to be done. And I've been thinking a lot about this international with all the speeches today, and I look at someone like Kyle, and I realize, this is important to understand because he's much more similar to a startup CEO, another 25-year-old startup guy in California, than either of those are to 50-year-old guys like me and the people we've been selling to over the last few years. That's just really evening the playing field from people who are so used to technology and use it all the time. But while we've advanced in the technology and the amount and the importance it is in our lives for these people, we still sell like we're selling mainframes. I've heard, and I love it today, and we'll talk about the importance of salespeople later, but I've heard so much about setting up meetings and talking to these people and making all of that happen. And that's generally how we still do most of our sales. We go in, we have a guy call in, we set up a meeting, we tell them how we're going to buy something, we get a big sale put together, and we sell that off like they were buying a $5 million piece of IBM hardware. And that's not the way this generation actually works these days. They're much more comfortable buying technology, but they have a lot of expectations about how they should buy it. Now that's begun to change over the last 10, 15 years. Not as fast as you would think, but we have companies like Salesforce, you have .com, and this comes out of the business software world. So these are really selling to businesses who pioneered the idea of we'll sell to you monthly instead of buying a big upfront contract. But they still had a contract you had to sign for that software. You had companies like Constant Contact and Software We Could Layer who took away the contract, was still selling to you monthly. And my favorite example of this, and it has had a big impact on our business, of course, was Amazon that comes out with the idea that you can buy all the infrastructure you need. And probably most of the people here are starting their companies to some extent using Amazon as their back end on an hourly basis. It's amazing. It's a couple of pennies an hour, all based on this concept that you like the technology, stuff that we used to sell. The servers for these systems would cost $1 million, and now you can buy them for 2, 5, 10 cents an hour, on the idea that you're going to like the service and you're going to continue to use it. And there's some huge benefits about coming out there. But this idea of getting to an hourly type of sale that you don't have to talk to anybody and you can move forward has some huge benefits for the users of your technology or the users of your product, but also has some huge benefits for you as a company. And we'll talk about, that's where we get to as we end this, is how this can transform who you are, make you more profitable, get you in front of more clients, and really accelerate your growth. Because if you notice something here, I'll talk about this very specifically. These companies, in order of how much frictionless they got, how easy they made it for their clients to buy, is very much in order of how quickly they grew. We did a lot of support for software as a service companies at my last startup. Outsourced the companies that would sell business software over the internet were our primary client base, and we discovered that regardless of what they were selling, whether it was HR software or finance or sales, the companies that did this well grew at a much higher rate than the ones who didn't. That as important as the product was, the ability to interact with their clients in the space had a big correlation to how successful they were. So, what do you have to do if you want to go into a frictionless sale? I want to sell online. I want to make this really easy for my client to buy us, and I want to get this out there to as wide a variety of people as possible. I look at the 3 no-cos. Real simply, the 3 no-cos you want to do in order to get there. The first is no contact. People who use these products like to buy it on the product and learn about it on the product. This generation we talked about, that cloud generation, they like to be able to find out about your product and get up and going on that product through the web. I know it's an amazing thing, but we're so often now, we're still selling to these guys where you'd be like, okay, look at my product, say I was an e-commerce company, and then call me on the phone to buy it. You know, even if you can't get into transactional capabilities where you can actually buy your products on the web, you should at least be able to find out everything you want to know about your product on the web. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to want to talk to someone eventually. It doesn't mean they don't want to talk to someone early on. We'll talk about it. We use salespeople all the time, and some great advantages to using those salespeople. But if someone is investigating the space you're in and wants to look at a variety of different options that they can say, I want to implement this product for myself personally or within my organization, and they go to your website and it says, call here or sign up now and I'll have someone contact you, they're going to go to the next site where they'll tell them everything about their product. And you'll lose a large portion of your client base right there. You will never even get a chance to have a conversation with them because they're already going to move on to someone who's giving you that information and making it really easy for them to start with. So no contact doesn't mean you never have contact. It means you shouldn't have to have contact with the client in order for them to use your product and your systems. The second one, no contract. This is my particular favorite. Hourly, as I said earlier, hourly billing is a simple proposition. Contracts say one specific thing to your client. You're not going to like me enough, so I'm going to have to force you to use me for the next 2 years. That's exactly what it says. We all know that's why the telecom operators do it to us when we get mobile phones. You know, I know in the States, you know, we obviously subsidize our phones, so they lock you in for those 2 years. Your cable providers do the same thing. Why? So you can't say this is bad, and I'm going to move off to someone else next week. So because they made an investment in you, which think about your product. If your product really requires you to lock someone in for 2 years to keep them as a viable client, you probably need to improve what you're providing as a service and improve what you're doing out for the client base. On top of that, just the contract negotiation process is difficult, onerous, and keeps you from getting revenue for a long period of time. I don't know anybody else here who's spent 6 months negotiating a contract back and forth with someone who'd already decided to buy your stuff. But 6 months later, you're still doing red lines. You can put a contract up online. You'll love to do the I accept button, which everybody always hates. I always say, no one ever red lines a computer screen. No one ever looks at that I accept button and says, oh, no, I like these 4 words changed. They just hit I accept and they go on to the next piece. You're probably never going to get in it. Listen, we're not real estate developers here. We're selling technology people want to buy. We're selling products they want to buy. You're most likely never going to get back into some debate, and especially if you're selling hourly. If they don't like it, they're not going to end up paying you anyway. So why spend 6 months trying to get a contract out of them when you want to spend 6 months making them a happy client? The last piece on this is no complexity. This is the hardest piece for most of us because we do complex things. that help our clients dramatically. We do things that are just as simple as putting a photo up online. And we struggle with how to convey the value of that. But the reality is, it's beholden upon us as organizations to simplify our messages, to simplify the value to the end client so they can understand immediately what you bring to the table. And then to take the time as you develop the relationship with someone who's hopefully already working with you as a client to understand the complexity and the depth of this problem that you can solve. The company I thought did the best job of this was a company that did HR management and software, and much deeper than that, and how they did organizational performance, and very successful was SuccessFactors, which was acquired by SAP about 3 years ago. And it's amazing the depth of their products they have and where they go and the $1 billion in revenue they're doing. But SuccessFactors, for all of this organizational performance metrics, had one very simple message. Doing employee reviews stinks, and it's hard. We make it easier, and we make it more enjoyable for both the managers and the employees. I can understand that immediately. They immediately took a pain point problem that most people have. I don't know one person who says they love employee reviews. I never know anybody who's given employee reviews who loved them. I never know anybody's gotten an employee review who loved it. So the idea that you can make it a less painful process on this necessary evil was quite important. And now, of course, they're embedded into just huge parts of the organization and tied in the SAP product. But they didn't say that to get people when they wanted to come to them and learn about them. They came up with a very simple message of which then they can do additional depth. There's a lot of advantages if you can do these things. And I will say, aspirationally, it's going to be very difficult to come up with all three of these items. When we came out with our first cloud product, we didn't even have the ability to do this type of incremental billing. And when we did, to give you an example of a problem, we're trying to sell disks by the hour, disk space, and the cheapest we could get our disk space was 7.2 cents per gigabyte per month. And the reason we would is the billing system that we had. And we had this great billing system because we'd acquired an Irish company down in Dublin who actually wrote the whole product to do billing for us. And they ended up writing the entire product. Still, as great as it was, only had the capability to do 1/100th of a penny as their smallest increment. And 1/100th of a penny an hour comes out to 7.2 cents. I can multiply anything by 720, which is how many hours are in a month. And so there are a lot of technical challenges to this in implementing these items. But if you think about your business, think about which ones you can get over. If you can't sell online, at least they should be able to understand everything about you online. If you can't go and do an online sign-up, try to eliminate the contract process. Try to eliminate the long negotiations of time frames, because you're going to see what the great advantages are as it comes forward. I'm not going to do a lot of the benefits of the frictionless buy. Why it's good for the clients. We have limited time, but it'll be in here if anybody takes the presentation later. I think it's pretty obvious why, for most people, why buyers like to do it this way. It gives them a lot more flexibility for bursting. They don't have to pay for things till they start. One of the greatest things in IT, technology that is a hidden secret is it's not uncommon for people to buy technology that takes them so long to implement the technology within their organization, it's fully depreciated by the time it happens. It's amazing what it means that I'm not paying for it till I'm actually using it, what it means to that, again, that cloud generation. You get to take advantage of price breaks as they come. We talked, one of the great things when you're selling technology, everybody goes, I just bought this, especially if you're in a product world. I just bought this, and of course the next day you got discounted down $500. Right? When you're doing this kind of frictionless stuff, as things get, you never have that problem. No one's waiting for the price points to come down because it's great for them because they'll see those advantages as soon as they have them. But we know why that's important for the clients. And I will leave it with this because this isn't really put in the benefits of the frictionless sale for you. And we had this conversation. If you're not doing those things, there's a good chance one of your competitors are. And it is valuable for the end client. And so one of the first risks you have in this, which is even listed as one of the benefits, because it's really more of a risk, is that if you can't interact with your clients that way, someone else will, and you will lose a section of your client base who is more familiar with doing this kind of frictionless online transactional sales. But there are more benefits than just the fear factor. There's huge benefits to your organization as a startup and allowing you to scale quickly. The first is this idea of price. So 20 cents an hour comes out to, if someone pays 20 cents an hour for something, that comes out to $1,752 a year. Now, an average user for us, for example, uses about, our systems cost about 20 cents an hour for the average size. The smallest one's about 4, but most people use 20-cent ones, and they use about 10 of them. So now we're talking about they're using 20 cents and 10 of them over the course of the year. That's $17,000 they're spending every year on us. Now, on a 3-year contract, that's $52,000. So it's $17,500. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I went out and tried to get someone to contract to me for $52,000, they're going to take time to think about it, right? They're going to go out there and say, $52,000 is a lot of money. I better figure out who the right provider is, whether I can use them or not, whether I can go out and this is how I want to make this happen. 20 cents an hour, though, which is what they think in their mind that the product actually costs, that 20 cents, no one spends any time thinking about that. They're like, it's 20 cents. I'll try it out for a few hours. If it doesn't work, I'll turn it off. I've lost myself $1. It's amazing how much faster people make decisions, even organizations, because most companies have some sort of signing authority capabilities. And $52,000 is not your general everyday employee in the organization. They've got to go get authority, they got approvals and other pieces, but 20 cents an hour almost anybody can do and sign up for right away. So why you have this idea that you're actually going to end up spending a lot of money in the long term, the risk factor of spending that money goes down. People make those decisions much more quickly. And we do have people who have signed up online, for us, for example, who spend at the 20 cents an hour rate and spend $150,000 a month. I know Amazon's got ones that spend millions of dollars a month on this. You can take people and grow them significantly. By the time they're your client, they're spending it. The next one is, that's what we said, it makes for those fast decisions. Now my sales cycle can be a matter of minutes instead of a matter of weeks, months, or years. Someone, when they have a low threshold for risk, will make decisions much more quickly than when they're trying to make a big decision. And what's really nice about that is once they've signed up or they're using you, they're your client. And clients tend to interact with their providers much different than prospects do. We all know this. Going and selling additional things, that complexity we talked about earlier, is always much easier to an embedded client than it is to a brand new client. If you come in and they say, hey, we're doing this stuff with you, do you know we do database management services, or I can provide you a whole set of networks, or I can put you in Asia. That client isn't going to sit there and compare you against 5 different vendors and knock you down on pricing and go through the whole review and have the request for information and request for proposals. Usually they just go and buy additional items from you. And as a matter of fact, if you're really good at this, and most of the good applications are, you can even tie your system into the client systems via an API where there are other programs. So when they add an employee, you automatically add another user. For example, if you're doing like a SuccessFactors, and then you just charge them the next month. You don't even have to come up with an agreement for them to spend more money. They automatically grow with you as your business grows because you're billing them for what they used the prior month. It's amazing. It's so amazing that within 2 years of us launching our product, doing the online capabilities, not only did online sales, it was 75% of our new business. What we started calling unbooked growth. And what unbooked growth was no one called up and talked to me, they just grew. One month they used more than they did the month before. Within 2 years, it was surpassing our new bookings on actual booked new clients coming in. That just the natural growth of people's organizations expanding and them using more of our product was outstripping what we could go up and sign new customers. And you'll see this in most people who do these types of arrangements, is they can grow as the business grows and as they add employees or need new projects. And again, now you're frictionless. They don't need to go through that. You can either do that by having them grow, or you can do that by selling them additional, more complex items to add on to what they're using today. And what this really does is amazing in 2 factors. 1, because they're your existing client, and 2, because of how people, again, think about buying this, is it gets us out of that really nasty cycle of the competitive bids. Anybody who's ever had a big deal they wanted to win probably had to compete with someone else for that big deal. Very rarely do we get to walk into a client and say, hey, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to sell you something that's going to cost you $100,000. And the client says, yep, you're the only one, just send me a bid. Right? Yeah, there's going to be 2 or 3 other companies in there. They're going to be out there. And if you're really having the tech space, maybe a little less so for the digital space where you're more services, those people negotiate the heck out of that, and they know what the end of your year is, when the end of your quarter is, when your next financing round is, and Lord knows it's September 30th or December 31st, and you're in there going, okay, I'll give you another 10%, right? And the next person's saying, I'll give you another 10%, and they're driving it down. First off, no one ever negotiates 20 cents. No one calls up and says, I'll buy you if you give me down to 18 cents for this server next week. And secondly, when they're using you and you want to sell them the big deal, you want to get that really big usage. So now you're using the event that has 11,000 people as opposed to just having a couple hundred people in it. They're already your client. Again, they're not going to work you off of other people in the space because generally that's not the way existing client relationships work. And we discover that works whether you're a client spending $1,000 a month or a client spending $20,000 a month. These people will negotiate for us and you don't have that end of the quarter. Let's just drive those prices down to the floor. The last great advantage of this is measurement. I would take a show of hands. How many of you really have a good feeling for when you decide to go to an event or do PR, press, or do some advertising, what the actual result is in terms of new revenue within the organization? It's hard. It's insanely hard. It's exceedingly difficult for 2 reasons. One is it's hard to relate because you have a 6-month sales cycle or a 9-month sales cycle when you do the event and when you actually sign up those clients, or when you did the advertising or when you did the PR. And the second thing that's hard about it is you don't really know how much those people are spending and where they're spending and what they're spending and what that's related to. With this type of system, we could tell you down to the penny what we're doing about 1 billion bill logics a month, for example, and we can tell you the penny what every client's spending. And to a much better analysis, we can understand whether they came in through an event we did, or we did it through a Google AdWord, or we did it through a traditional sales process. We have a very good idea based on how they signed up. And that allows us to do what's called the CAC ratio. And for any of you who do decide to go out to the Valley and raise money, or any place that has a sophisticated investing base, you're probably going to hear about this CAC ratio. It's called Customer Acquisition Cost Ratio. It's why people want to go really big in the Valley. And the idea is this: the customer acquisition cost ratio, the more you know about what it costs you to acquire a customer, the more you can spend to acquire new customers. As long as the profitability of that customer pays itself back in about 1.5 years, so it's a 1.5, meaning 1.5 spending will get a 1.5 years worth of spending will get you $1 worth of revenue. You want to keep spending money. It's why these guys go out there and go big all the time, because they've realized that while they're losing money getting that client will be worth way more to them in the long run, and they're going to spend every dime to get every single client they can. And they can do that by proving it through on things like the CAC ratio. So even if you're not raising money, for the first time, if you do this type of frictionless sales, you'll get the kind of tracking that allows you to understand what you're doing and how much better and what works and what's not, and whether you should spend more money or less money on it. If you're getting really successful, you then take that into an investor and say, look at my CAC ratio. Right now, I'm getting clients and it's only costing me $0.50 worth of revenue to go out and get them over the long term, and I can guarantee that you will have investors knocking down your door, because that's the most important thing, is so that you can acquire clients you can acquire customers that will be profitable over the long term, and your ability to track that is incredibly important, both internally or for your investors. But sales doesn't go away. This is a bit of holy war in the Valley right now. You actually do have some people who would really, really like to eliminate sales altogether. And probably the 2 ends of the spectrum would be your traditional big tech companies like IBM. I think actually an English company, I love their comment, it was Colt, I believe, who had said that they wanted to have, they required their clients to call a rep and buy from them and do things a certain way, and then it would take 2 to 4 weeks to install, because their clients didn't want it faster than 2 weeks. Now, I went there and said, I know a lot of people who don't care if they have it within 2 weeks, but I've never had a client say to me, oh, you got that to me way too fast, you jerk. You should have taken a cut. Well, you got it in a day? Why didn't you wait 2 weeks, man? Now what am I supposed to do? No, it's not the way people think, but we still have that kind of traditional mindset. I have to have reps. But on the flip side, you have some companies, and Google is probably the best example of this, who will not ever give you any personal interaction at all. Now, we were spending $2 million a year on Google AdWords, and they wouldn't even give us a name of someone to call if we had a problem. 150 grand a month, wouldn't even give us the, no, you guys are too small, we don't provide customer support for that level of client, or you get a name, you just call the 800 number, and if you have a problem with your 150 grand, you'll figure it out. But there is a US company, and I've taken this over and over, called GoDaddy. You might have seen them out there, they do domain registrations and email, and I remember I signed up for them to do some of my own domains, and that product's $10 a year. And someone called me. $10 a year, it's 80 cents a month. They called me. How's everything going? Just want to make sure you're okay. And at the end they might say, we have some other services. And they called me again the next day. They called me. Someone from Phoenix too. Actually in the States, as we've heard, is tremendously expensive. Wherever you're at, Kyle, I'll take you to lunch someplace that costs less than $15 next time you're in town. But they did that at something that was $10, and I realized, that's the power of that human outreach. That even though I signed up online, I never had to deal with them for anything, they realized if someone called me and made sure things were going away, they could improve my satisfaction and maybe upsell me additional items. And people actually do want contracts after a while because they want to be able to lock in lower pricing. For example, I know I'm going to spend 10 grand a month on you. I'd like to lock my pricing if I commit for 2 years. And of course, you're more than happy to do that. And you just create those long-term relationships. Clients don't have to answer the phone, but we also know no matter what generation you are, whether you're a geezer like me or you're 25, most people really appreciate it when their companies reach out to them, especially when something is going wrong, because no matter what you can do, there's a feeling of, hey, I can get help from someone who's a real person. And those people are the ones who are creating and upselling. And remember, think about this. Think about all those cold calls we talked about and getting involved in these clients. Imagine if all your clients were using even if it wasn't your full product, but a subset, and the people you were calling weren't people that you were hoping might use you, but were already using you in some way. What a better way to get your sales force productive and outgrowing by helping them grow that business out. So that, if you want to learn a little more about it, I have to give my LinkedIn information because I don't have a company website yet, but find me at Treb Ryan.